What's up everyone, in this video we're doing a deep dive for Season 2 Episode 3 of House of the Dragon, titled The Burning Mill. This is a classic setup type of episode, so not a ton of action, but good storyline development to push us to the action. By the way, we have deep dives for all of Season 1, and we cover the first 2 episodes of Season 2 as well, so check those out if you haven't yet. No time to waste, let's get going. We're going to start this video off by covering the skirmish between the Brackens and the Blackwoods at the beginning of the episode. Then we'll split the video into 3 sections: Team Rhaenyra, Team Alicent aka the Greens, and Team Daemon. Now we've typically done the Blacks versus the Greens, but Daemon is starting to do his own thing, so we gotta create a new team just for him. So the episode begins with the Brackens and the Blackwoods. They've been feuding for a long time now, so this whole Rhaenyra versus Aegon thing is a perfect reason for them to fight some more. Remember back in Season 1, when a young Rhaenyra was listening to potential suitors, we saw a fatal skirmish break out between a Blackwood and Bracken boy, with the young Blackwood lord winning the fight. This time the Blackwoods are siding with Rhaenyra, while the Brackens are siding with Aegon. An argument escalates into physical violence, leaving both sides decimated. More and more blood is now spilling on both sides.
Both these houses have lived in this area of the Riverlands for quite some time, with constantly shifting property boundaries. The court of Viserys never saw fit to take care of the issue though. A lot of the feuds between them are described with conflicting info. Picture a Westeros version of the Hatfields and McCoys. So let's just say the Blackwoods came from the north and worshipped the old gods, while the Brackens worshipped the Seven. Note that the Hightowers / new Targaryens also favor the Seven. There is the other issue that Aemond Bracken was killed over a decade ago in pursuit of Rhaenyra's hand in marriage, like Chen said, so maybe the Brackens felt less loyalty to Rhaenyra's cause in this case. Their struggle isn't entirely different from what just happened with the Hightowers and the Targaryens, because one family overstepped what they were owed. It also connects with the repeated references of this war's flames being fanned by battle-hungry young men. Seems like wars of this scale really only start after everybody has forgotten how cruel a war actually is.
Alright, now let's quickly cover Daemon taking Harrenhal. In the last episode, we saw Daemon flying off with Caraxes after his argument with Rhaenyra. He arrives at Harrenhal to find zero resistance waiting for him. The castle is massive, but in a state of disrepair, especially after the Dragonfire from Aegon the Conqueror way back in the day.
Not gonna lie, I felt like the takeover was gonna be much more climactic as well. I love the setting we're getting built up. If you thought the vibe at Storm's End during the Season 1 finale was grim, this is on a whole new level.
Daemon is greeted by Sir Simon Strong, Castellan of Harrenhal. Simon is more than happy to pledge his loyalty to Rhaenyra and the Blacks, but Daemon is trying to get Simon to see him as Rhaenyra's equal. Either way, the Strongs hate the Greens, and they especially hate Larys, since they all know that he was the one who killed Lionel and Harwin back in the day. Daemon is really rattled by how easy this takeover is, but there's still major issues. First of all, even though Harrenhal is the largest castle in the Seven Kingdoms, it's falling apart. Aegon the Conqueror burned a ton of it back in the day, and nobody has taken the time to repair it. There's roughly 40,000 soldiers in the Riverlands, but they're already occupied and fighting one another after the battle between the Blackwoods and the Brackens. House Tully rules the Riverlands, but the leader, Grover Tully, is old as fuck and pretty much on his deathbed, so leadership is non-existent and the forces are all disorganized. Daemon intends to unite these bannermen, station them at Harrenhal, and then march on King's Landing and take the throne. It's all so simple, you see.
Keep in mind what we already know of Harrenhal. It's an old, massive, cursed castle created by Harren the Black.
It is said to be a cursed place, that it passes judgment on all who pass beneath its gates.
There's literally blood mixed into the mortar, which is never a good omen when you consider how many of the lords of Harrenhal have died in rather savage ways, in both House of the Dragon and in Thrones. So of course it's also haunted as hell. At its peak though, it's incredibly formidable as a stronghold unless dragons are involved.
Harrenhal also takes a toll on Daemon, and he starts having visions of both young Rhaenyra and Jaehaerys. It seems like his conscience is starting to catch up to him. There's this woman named Alice who is watching Daemon and tells him that he's gonna die at Harrenhal.
It's the perfect backdrop for Daemon to reflect on the pain and loss he's caused others over the years. The Christmas Carol routine really helps him reflect on the terrible shit he's done, and the subconscious thoughts he's probably got kicking around his old mind. These are some of the first scenes we've seen him look genuinely frightened. I like it, because it creates a more three-dimensional version of Daemon as a character.
Alright, so while Daemon is on his Harrenhal adventure, the rest of Team Black is trying to figure out what to do. After burying the twins, Rhaenyra has to then deal with her own council, all urging her to take action and unleash the dragons. She still remains hesitant and believes that war might be avoided. Rhaenys tells her to find a way to talk to Alicent and see if peace can be brokered. Rhaenyra wants to, but finding a way to communicate with Alicent privately will be difficult.
Yeah, it's clear Rhaenys functions as a sensible buffer to Rhaenyra, where everybody else is totally on the opposite page. Rhaenys' points on the futility of tracing the root of the war are insightful because a war against kin also loops back into the Brackens and Blackwoods, since there is surely some shared blood over there. The Black Council seems way too eager and presumptive. A solid amount of their dragons don't even have riders yet, so Rhaenyra chooses to stick to the old advice of Viserys: keep this from becoming dragon on dragon, aka a nuclear war, until it can no longer be avoided. The treason line sets everybody at the table straight, aside from Rhaenys, who's already rational. Again, like with Alicent's own council, it's a bunch of dudes seeking to mute the input of a queen.
Perhaps it is time for you to think about secreting yourself somewhere safe.
Rhaenyra goes to Mysaria for help on finding a way to reach Alicent privately. Mysaria has stuck around after the whole Eric thing, and she respects Rhaenyra for upholding Daemon's deal. Mysaria offers assistance to Rhaenyra in exchange for a place in her court. Mysaria is really smart, so she would be a huge asset.
Yeah, she's always been resourceful as well, plus she sees Rhaenyra for who she is in a more positive light than most. The cost of the backstabbing by Larys is starting to stack up.
At the same time, Rhaenyra is doing some contingency planning in case she can't broker peace with Alicent. She sends her 3 youngest sons, Joffrey, Aegon, and Viserys, to the Vale along with 2 baby dragons named Stormcloud and Tyraxes. She also sends the eggs from Syrax. Since Rhaena doesn't have a dragon, Rhaenyra asks her to go along with this party. Rhaena is devastated since she can't stay around and help out with the war, but Rhaenyra tells her that she's still going to play an important role. Lady Jane Arryn has pledged the Vale's support if Rhaenyra can give them a dragon in return, so keeping her son safe will be key for this alliance with the Vale, and that's where Rhaena comes in. I think once war begins and things get crazy at the Vale, Rhaena is supposed to take the sons and dragon eggs to Pentos, where Lord Regios will protect them. I'm guessing that the oldest son, Joffrey, would probably stay and fight for the Vale with his dragon.
Makes sense to me. This is a big farewell because now things are real. Rhaena makes some real sacrifice even if it's not on the battlefield. Some are meant to fight and some are meant to ensure the survival of the bloodline. Speaking of bloodlines and heirs, Corlys also hasn't been the same since his near-death experience. That loyalty he had to Rhaenyra has dulled just a bit, and it seems like he's not grasping how serious the war is about to be. All of a sudden, experience with the sea matters and declaring the heir to Driftmark, which could send us down a different path, knowing he only has 2 other possible unconfirmed children.
And we'll get to this part later on in the video when we cover the Greens, but on one of her scouting missions, Baela catches Criston Cole in the open field and almost gets him. She reports back to Rhaenyra and the council, and they now know that the Greens are moving towards Harrenhal. Anyways, Rhaenyra still wants one last ditch attempt to negotiate peace with Alicent, so she uses Mysaria's expertise to find a way to sneak into King's Landing. She's dressed as a nun, and since most of the small folk don't really know what the high class actually looks like, she easily makes her way into the Great Sept for her reunion with Alicent. We'll cover the meeting later, but let's move on to what the Greens have been up to in this episode. So now that Criston Cole is the hand, he actually has a lot of say in the decision making. During a small council meeting, him and Alicent have an argument because Cole wants to march towards Harrenhal. Alicent is against that decision, and she also faults Cole for sending Eric on that stupid death mission. Aegon sides with Cole, and a plan is laid out. Cole will take whatever men he can muster and march towards Harrenhal. The Riverlands are key for this war. Taking Harrenhal pretty much means taking the Riverlands. Cole will need to turn the smaller houses to their side along the way, since that's the only way he's going to have enough numbers to take Harrenhal. Vhagar must still remain in King's Landing to defend the city.
Cole starts this all out looking like anybody who's ever taken a job they weren't qualified for and is now coming to terms with faking it till he makes it for the rest of his living days. Gotta have that grind set, man. These new guys Aegon appointed seem like a bunch of jackasses, which checks out because Aegon is literally the king jackass.
Good. First blood in our name.
The lack of auto is so obvious here because the council can't seem to agree on anything. Cole seems incredibly proud of his step-by-step plot. The request to Aegon to approve it proves what Alicent has always feared.
Aegon, meanwhile, wants to ride out with Cole. I gotta say, I respect Aegon for not being afraid to go into battle, but ultimately him risking his life is pretty stupid, and Larys ends up stopping him from doing that. Larys is slowly weaving his way into Aegon's favor.
Yeah, well played by him once again. The guys who Aegon freshly appointed as knights should have the same desires as Larys, because the second this guy is dead, you've lost the best gig you're ever gonna have. Pitting Aegon against his own insecurities and being king is just Larys sticking to the playbook. First it was Otto, now it was Alicent. The immediate promotion to the council after was insane. The Master of Whispers is generally a master of manipulation who may also be creepy as hell. Larys is the perfect fit. I kinda liked Aegon subtly checking his boys before the scene closes out too. He's still trying to figure out the whole king thing and who he actually is as a king. He knows he's not truly a fighter by any means, but he's desperate to prove himself as a respected ruler anyway.
Alicent's brother, Sir Gawain Hightower, joins Cole on his march towards Harrenhal. Side note, we haven't heard about Gawain Hightower since I believe Season 1, Episode 1. Anyways, Hightower insults Cole right away when he meets him, since he's mad that Cole has replaced his father as Hand.
Asking for her favor is a callback to what we saw in Season 1 during the tournament. It's a big gesture because it shows she still cares for Cole deeply and vice versa.
Trouble nearly arises when they get caught in an open field. Gawain isn't taking any of this seriously and he's thinking about hitting a local tavern, and Cole looks to the sky and notices an enemy dragon in the air. As mentioned earlier, this is Baela and her dragon Moondancer, and they immediately descend upon Cole. Cole, Gawain, and the rest of the squad go on a dead sprint for the forest, and they just make it in time. Cole's awareness saved all of their lives, and we see that Gawain finally respects him after that moment.
Baela looks fierce as hell up there, and you can see the vengeance for Luke burning in her eyes. This is most definitely Daemon's daughter. Her and Rhaenyra both get built up quite a bit as characters in these last 2 eps. Just gonna come out and say it. I think Gawain is soft. Too much time chilling out in Old Town, perhaps.
We also see this heartbreaking moment involving Helaena. She's telling herself that babies die all the time, so she shouldn't be sad about Jaehaerys. Devastating. Also, she forgives Alicent for the death of Jaehaerys. Helaena is smart. She knows that Alicent's sex session with Cole contributed to the negligence that allowed Jaehaerys to be murdered.
She hasn't been there for her kids as much as she should have been throughout all the craziness that's gone down. I think Helaena is forgiving her for Cole and possibly some other things. Now she's acting more caring and is beginning to do her own thing when processing hardships and how she interacts with her kids.
After electing to stay back, Aegon ends up going on a night out with his homies in the Kingsguard. They have a new squire that is a virgin and they want to get him laid. They end up hitting up the Street of Silk. There's also this side story involving this dude Ulf, who claims to be a bastard grandson of the old King Jaehaerys and the son of Balon. So technically this dude is half brothers with Viserys and Daemon. If this is all true, then he would have Targaryen blood and be able to ride dragons. The guys he's hanging with simply don't believe him.
He's quite a character. Seems like a guy you'd meet at a townie bar who will tell you 1,000 stories over a bottle or two, but maybe a couple are true. He seems very convinced of his lineage, but at the same time, quick to protect himself, as we'll see.
Anyways, at that moment, Aegon pulls up and offers to put everyone's drink on his tab. They storm into one of the brothels and catch Aemond hanging out with that older prostitute. Apparently that was his first lay, and he only goes to her for sexual services in the brothel. Aegon humiliates Aemond for being attached to his first prostitute and never trying anyone else. This man Aegon has been bullying Aemond for ages. Aemond hangs dong in front of everyone and walks out. I think I'd best summarize this episode by saying Aemond hangs dong.
They've always had some weird stuff below the surface, and the stage got reset for this when Aemond disrespected Aegon earlier in the episode at the council meeting.
That is precisely why you must remain, brother. It's a brave thought.
Things between these two won't be the same after this, and it's pretty easy to see that Aemond is going to immediately cast aside the only comfort and love he's known recently to go headfirst into battle now.
Okay, now we're finally at the Rhaenyra-Alicent reunion. Rhaenyra catches her in the Great Sept, and they have a convo about everything that's gone down. Rhaenyra says that she wasn't responsible for Jaehaerys' murder, and she knows that Alicent didn't greenlight Luke's murder. But during this convo, it comes to light that the whole, Viserys chose Aegon last minute as his heir thing was actually a misunderstanding. Alicent finally realizes that Aegon didn't mean Aegon her son, it meant Aegon the Conqueror. This realization is also important for Rhaenyra. She can now rest knowing that her father never replaced her as heir. She tells Alicent that she's gotta fall back since this is all a misunderstanding that's Alicent's fault, and Alicent's stance is that it's too late and she's supporting her son no matter what. I'll say this though, I hate Alicent as much as anyone else, but even if that whole Aegon misunderstanding didn't happen, it was clear that Otto and the small council were gonna have Aegon usurp the throne anyways. The conversation ends with Rhaenyra leaving, and she now knows that peace is no longer on the table. It never really was, but now Rhaenyra knows for a fact that Alicent will fight on a lie. Shout out to Slim Charles.
If it's a lie, then we fight on that lie. But we gotta fight.
Yeah, and to that point, Chen, Otto also hints that he figured Viserys never really wanted Aegon to be king either. So you can argue that Alicent might have a little bit of pride, and some part of her wanted to take that spot from Rhaenyra. The scene is set up around prayer candles, just like these two had done in Season 1 for some pretty candid convos. Rhaenyra, clearly what she believed were Viserys' wishes, had a deep impact on the path she was going to be taking. Great emotional display of acting by Emma Darcy. Turns out, she was right the whole time. Alicent was wrong. But the whole thing is too far gone to take back.
Alright, that does it for our recap of episode 3. We'll be back with episode 4 when it drops. Appreciate everyone for watching. Catch y'all later.